to build your career with CMI confidence? It all starts with the tools at your fingertips. CMI creates workplaces full of inspiring leaders. With its on-demand resources, network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations. Search CMI Confidence today.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Hello and welcome to this webinar on Chartered Management Consultant, which is transforming firms and careers. I'm Matt Roberts. I'm the Director for Chartered Management Consultant at the CMI. And over the next few minutes, we're going to talk to you a little bit more in depth around what the Chartered Management Consultant Award is, how it works, and how it may benefit you. I'm also going to be joined by two guests a little bit later in the webinar, Josh Campbell and Kelly McMurray. So very much looking forward to introducing you to those guys shortly. I want to share a few slides with you today, though, just to give you an introduction to the Chartership. And if we move on to the next slide, we'll see that following an initial pilot and the development of the standard back in 2019, we now have over 1,250 fully chartered management consultants. That number is growing all of the time. You'll see on the right-hand side of the screen here that as recently as December, we went through the 1,000 mark. So we're already another 25% on from there. This new Chartership is scaling at real pace, and many of the leading firms across the UK are involved with it. When we just cast our minds back to the development of the standards that underpin the Chartership, we did this in partnership with the industry. And so you'll see that our partners, the Management Consultancy Association, the MCA, were incredibly important to the development of the standard. And the inputs of organisations large and small, independent consultants, clients of consulting, government, were all taken into account as we developed these standards. Beyond the 1,250 already that have got the Chartership under their belt, we've got a very, very healthy pipeline of further early career professionals that are working towards getting chartered. And they're working across more than 50 consultancy firms in the UK that have engaged around the Chartership in the years since we launched this officially back in 2021. What we're trying to do with this Chartership is to make it fully inclusive. And so whether you're a management consultant working for a firm of whatever size or specialism, whether you're an independent consultant or perhaps you're working as an internal consultant within an organisation, there are routes available for you to come forward for assessment and to see if you meet the standard as a chartered management consultant. We've undertaken some research in recent times with the chartered community, and it was great to see that over 88% of people that responded to the survey not only have become chartered themselves, but have then gone on to encourage their colleagues or others within their network to get chartered. And you can see, and you'll see dotted throughout these slides, a number of really encouraging quotes. This one from Lee at ADS&T, Atkins Realis, talking about how getting chartered and having the accreditation has enabled them to improve their bids. Moving on to the next slide, if we can, please. What we'll see is that when we explore the thoughts of the chartered community in a little bit more detail, we get more very encouraging feedback from them. What we're really looking to do with this Chartership, of course, is to raise standards of professionalism, assure clients of ethical behaviour, and I guess also to help establish a benchmark of what good looks like for consultants at different stages of their career, and importantly for clients, so that they understand whether they're getting the best possible service from their advisor. When we talked to the chartered community, 9 out of 10 of them found that actually becoming chartered, they felt had really helped to recognise their track record in consulting. That's often said, the assessment process itself is reflective. It enables the candidate to sort of look back and reflect on their achievements in recent times and utilise those achievements to address the criteria of the Chartership. It also, of course, helps people to think ahead in terms of where they're going next with their professional development. That's a hallmark of any chartered professional award. Beyond the track record that people are demonstrating through the assessment, people also feel that sense of pride coming out of the assessment. They've got that personal and professional development committed to, and they're also enabling themselves to demonstrate a level of excellence, not only to their clients, but often to their colleagues as well. Many chartered consultants are working in organizations where there are other specialisms with similar chartered professional awards, and that adjacency and equivalence of recognition is very important to them. Ultimately, though, they feel that they're helping to demonstrate integrity and that commitment to ethics that I mentioned a moment ago through their adherence to the competency framework that underpins the Chartership assessment itself. If we can move to the next slide, please. I think it's also really important to understand that the next generation of chartered consultants is truly diverse. Of the 1,250 fully chartered consultants that we have, many of them are experienced professionals, by which we mean that they've been working in consultancy for more than 7 years. When we look at the next generation, these are people on accredited pathways within organizations, which will eventually make sure that those people are ready to become chartered. When we look at the diversity within that group, it's incredibly positive, far more reflective of society generally than perhaps the wider consulting industry and many other industries. But you can see there the majority are female. We've got very, very healthy representation from minority ethnic backgrounds. We have a number of other measures there, including a proportion of people with disabilities, those coming from lower or intermediate socioeconomic backgrounds. So the diversity of the consulting community is improving all the time, becoming more reflective of our society. But importantly, when we talk to this group of early career professionals on these pathways, we see that actually over 7 out of 10 of them feel that having that opportunity to become chartered makes them feel valued by their employer and also motivated to stay with that employer because of the opportunity. So real benefits start to emerge here around both talent acquisition and retention for consultancy firms. If we can move on to the next slide, please. I think it's also important to reference the recognition that the Chartership is starting to gain across the industry. You can see on the left-hand side here, Sir Gareth Rees-Williams, the government's Chief Commercial Officer at the Cabinet Office, gave us an incredibly encouraging and positive quote as part of our celebrations of going through the 1,000 chartered consultant barrier a few months ago. The idea that this chartership is helping to provide assurance to government in which consultancy firms they procure and the level of trust that this helps to build in the service that will be delivered is not lost on Gareth, as you can see here in his quote. I think also very positively, looking back to the autumn of last year, when we look at the MCA awards, we now deliver the Chartered Management Consultant of the Year each year, and David Orr from Mott MacDonald was the Chartered Management Consultant of the Year in 2023. But he also took home the top prize for an individual consultant on the night. That's the Times Consultant of the Year award. So great to have that award being given to somebody who has gone through the chartership process. I hope that just sets the scene a little bit for you in terms of the background to the chartership and what we're trying to achieve, how many people are involved, and how we're going about this. In a moment, I'm going to introduce a couple of guests, the first of which is Josh Campbell. Josh is the Business Development Manager for Chartered Management Consultant at the CMI, and Josh is going to cover off a few more slides before we introduce our second guest. So Josh, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. So we can move on to the next slide, please. What I'm going to do briefly now is just explain exactly what chartership is, and then talk more later about how you get to chartership. So essentially, chartership is a status like any chartership, and you get to chartership in 2 ways. One is via the amount of experience you have, and the second then is proving your credentials by going through an assessment process. And this is based upon this framework. So as Matt said earlier, this is an industry developed framework. There's 3 main parties involved. One is representatives of the industry. The second is the MCA, the Management Consulting Association. And third is us. And as you'll see there, there's 4 main elements to this framework. right at the core is that commitment to value and ethics and acting in your client's best interests. Second is leadership and management in a consulting environment. The third is then the client operating environment. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about it right now, but this is the critical part. And then fourth is an ongoing development pathway and commitment to continuing your professional development. So there's two ways that you can use this framework. This is readily available on the website. We'll also send out a link to this. If you're thinking about that you might want to apply and you'll think about, well, what am I going to be tested against? This is effectively your due diligence document. There's 54 competencies that you'll be asked to prove your competency around via around 4 to 6 case studies. And so if you're at that point, this is the document that you want to read to work out, okay, have I got any gaps that I need to fill before testing my credentials? If you're at a stage where you're not ready, but you just want to understand what best practice in the consulting industry looks like, this is your cut out and keep guide. It's a free resource. I think it's underused. I would encourage everyone on this call to have a look at this document, get your head around it, and then start thinking about, okay, how can I improve my skills against this best practice framework? So moving on to the next slide, just as individuals can become chartered, and this is what Kelly's going to talk about, companies can also, you can get your internal program accredited by us also. And what we're looking for is a development pathway that has different interventions for different consultants depending upon where they are in their career, from the early stage 0 to 2 years, which we call foundation, through to applied, and then finally to full chartership themselves. And there's a number of benefits that I'll come on to talk about later, but essentially companies are using this first as a talent management tool, and secondly, this is something that you can advertise out to your potential clients as that your company is operating to the highest standards that there are in the industry. So there's both individual accreditation and then company accreditation. And then moving on to the next slide, there's various pathways available to you. Very simply, if I start with point 2, if you have 7 years of experience against that framework that we talked about earlier, you can apply immediately for full chartered status. If you've got 5 years, you can apply for associate status and then top up to full status within 3 years. Now, you can accelerate that in one of 2 ways. Point 1 at the top of this slide, if your company, as Whitetree does and Kelly's organization does, has their program accredited, you can actually go for associate status within 3 years and full chartership within 5. The other alternative for you is to gain a qualification, and you'll see those. And again, we'll send out the slides after so you can look at the detail. There's a level 5 diploma and a level 7 extended diploma. If you complete them, again, you can accelerate the point at which you can get chartered. And the chartership process I'll talk about later, but essentially that's it for now. So I'll hand back to Matt and Kelly. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. I hope that was really useful for you all to hear. And now I'm delighted to welcome Kelly McMurray to the webinar. Kelly, great to have you with us, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon, everyone.
Good to see you, Kelly. So, Kelly, you lead talent acquisition at Whitetree, and recently have been involved in getting an accredited pathway in place at Whitetree, so that some of your colleagues can move towards becoming chartered. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment or two, but I wondered if perhaps you could give us your view on why you feel it's important that we now have a chartership for management consulting.
Absolutely. I think firstly, when we identified the ChMC back in, I think it was December time, we really started looking into it. We were hugely excited here at Whitetree. So just to sort of set the scene, Whitetree, we're a agile and growing consulting firm focused on transformational change, and we have a range of consultants within the business. We're 50 in terms of headcount, and we are hugely focused on the engagement and retention and sort of the excellence of our team. So when we first noticed this new accreditation, we were all hugely excited about what that could mean for us, and sort of jumped into starting to get to know it, and you guys at ChMC were fantastic in introducing it to us and what that could mean. So I think, you know, for us within our industry sector, and especially here at Whitetree, it's very much about sort of setting and raising the bar. Our reputation at Whitetree is key. So there's kind of two sides of the coin, really. You know, firstly, for me as a talent manager, it's very much about ensuring that we are focused on what can we do to support the development of our people. And what are they looking for? So we're always looking for sort of those opportunities. And then also, what can we do to, you know, really demonstrate to our clients our excellence and our sort of real credibility. So our reputation within Whitetree is key. We're very well known across our industry sectors, which is predominantly defence, security, and now healthcare. And it's excellent that we can talk about this. So for us, our individual team members are very diverse in terms of their technical skill set. But what is now beautiful is that there's a common recognition that they can have under the ChMC accreditation, and demonstrating that commitment to excellence and continuous professional development. We have a lot of people in the organisation that are chartered. You might be a chartered engineer or a chartered accountant or a chartered manager, but what is fantastic is we now have something that encompasses the whole organisation and all of its people.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. And so you recently led the work at Whitetree to get your sort of in-house developmental pathways accredited against the Chartered Management Consultant Framework. So tell us a little bit about that experience. How did that go? What were the good points? What were the challenging moments?
It was really positive, actually. So I wasn't quite sure of what to expect when I jumped into it. But I think one of the things that stood out for me at the outset is really how recognizable the competency framework is. You know, when you look through that in detail, it's very exciting because it's so representative of what we do as consultants. So that's a fantastic starting point, because we're all immediately bought into what it is. I think going through the accreditation itself was great. It was definitely thought-provoking. It really did support all of the different elements that we're looking to achieve as Whitetree in, you know, really developing our career paths from our sort of early careers consultants through to our principal consultants. You're provided with a mapping specialist. Ours was brilliant. He really did support us in understanding, you know, what we need to put together, what we already have, which we did already have some really good material, because we're fully committed to this already. So it was a great process. I think one of the things that that stood out to me as well at the end of it was, you know, very much this is a continuous process for us. So we came away with it with the accreditation, and we've already got some great plans that we want to start to think about rolling out in the next 12 months. So this isn't the fact of just trying to get through accreditation. For us, it's very much about what can we do to, you know, to optimize and improve that experience for our employees, to make that sort of experience enjoyable and rewarding and actually relatable. And so the material that they've got, I know our staff are sort of thoroughly enjoying starting to work through.
Great. Well, I'm delighted to hear that point you made about how recognisable the standards were and what was detailed within the framework. That's great to hear, and is a testament to those that were involved in putting that together. As Josh mentioned earlier on, we made sure that stakeholders from right across the industry were involved in that. So that's great to hear. I think the other thing is that, you know, accrediting these pathways, it's not just necessarily all about sort of training interventions that you're delivering to your team. It could be all sorts of different learning opportunities, mentoring, could be on-the-job learning,
Absolutely. Yeah. So we do, there's lots that we were already doing within Whitetree, as you say, mentoring. We have some great sort of induction training, you know, typical training that follows individuals throughout their course of their career in Whitetree. But now we have something that is very structured. We have a variety of learning paths that are accredited, and it's great for our people to know that they're able to jump onto that at any time, and they're investing their time in something that's going to give them an absolutely fantastic output at the end for them as individuals and for us as a business as well.
Great. And with your remit around talent acquisition, I guess you must be delighted that this is another
Absolutely.
string to the bow for Whitetree.
Absolutely. So we do, we're very, very focused on our people, as you'd expect as a consulting business. We all are. Retention is key to us. We've had some real sort of steady growth over the course of the last 5 years, and our retention levels are really very high. And one of the things we're always looking at understanding is what do our employees want at the moment, and what can we do? So we're always looking to go above and beyond. You know, there's all the sort of normal typical things that you're looking at in terms of benefits and salary, but the standout thing that all of our consultants are looking for is opportunity to develop. And I think, you know, now having this, it's a real milestone for Whitetree that we can say we have invested in that, and that is available to you. It's great in terms of attracting talent to the business, and hopefully we've just gone through accreditation, so we got that in April. So hopefully that's going to, you know, further impact retention moving forward. You know, and it's great to be up on the board with, you know, people like BAE and PwC that are accredited. You know, Whitetree is an organisation of 50. I think that's testament to the investment that we're putting in for our people and ultimately for our clients.
Absolutely, indeed it is. Okay, so look, alongside getting those pathways in place for perhaps people slightly earlier in their career to move towards that chartership, as I mentioned earlier on, most of the currently chartered professionals are more experienced because the early career people are on those pathways, which take a little while just to come to sort of maturity. What's your view on encouraging some of your more experienced consultants to get chartered? How are you going about that?
Yeah, good question. So I think we're probably very lucky in the respect that all of our people are hungry for development opportunity. So this was hugely well received across Whitetree. We are very open in our organisation in terms of sort of our culture and our communications with our people. So as soon as we started looking into this, we let our people know that this was on the horizon, and they started to get quite excited about it, and we started sharing information. So we do a lot to promote this. So we give regular briefings as to what it means. We have a careers intranet site, and there's lots of easily accessible information on there in terms of the ChMC material. You guys are brilliant at giving us sort of marketing material that we've been using. We've been sending it out as mailers. We've just we're starting to go through our mid-year review process at the moment, and of course, you know, in terms of resources and tools and things we're asking our people to look at, you know, ChMC is high up on the list there. So we promote that a lot, and I think we're seeing a good uptake in terms of people that are interested. We have some that are working their way through Chartership at the moment. We have lots of inquiries of people that are looking into it to see what that means, and we have a lot of people working their way through the pathway already. And as I say, we only became accredited in April, so I think that's a positive story to tell. And I'm just excited to see what this looks like in sort of 12 months' time, when we can see what the real impact is for our people and our clients.
Yeah, you and me both. So just with regard to that, obviously a recent cause of celebration for you guys in terms of getting accredited. How are your clients responding to that?
Yeah, good question. I think, you know, we're getting some good feedback at the moment. We're starting to look at how we can sort of further promote that. I think for us, what we're anticipating is this is really going to give us a competitive edge with our bidding as well. So we're starting to weave this discussion in with a lot of our clients in our bids. I think, you know, it really does demonstrate our commitment to excellence. We've got a large industry event that we are hosting this week, actually. So we've got nearly 200 people that are attending, our clients, and it's definitely going to be a hot topic of conversation. I know I'm going to be bringing it up there as well, and understanding, you know, who within sort of our guests that we have, you know, on Thursday, who knows about this fantastic accreditation, and you know, and getting sort of their perspective on it. But I think it's great to be part of it at this early stage. And it's exciting to see what the journey is going to look like for us and ChMC.
Absolutely. That's very good. Thank you. So, look, I'm going to ask one more question in a moment, Kelly, but before I do, just for those of you that are watching live, if you've got a question that you'd like to ask today, please do type it in the chat. We're going to put some time aside at the end of the webinar to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can. So we'd love to hear from you. So, Kelly, just before we hand back to Josh for a few minutes, any sort of thoughts from you for perhaps people that are watching today or watching back later on who are considering getting chartered? Any thoughts for those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the first step is just starting to look into it. There's lots of information out there that I think you can look at, you know, in your own time in terms of understanding the competency framework and the process. I think the great thing about it is there's lots of different ways to become chartered, and that's the beauty of it. You know, there's not a one size fits all process, so there should be something that works for you. But the first starting point is really just to take a look at it. I'll be surprised if people would look at it and not feel that there's a real close alignment with what they're doing, you know, as experienced consultants. As I say, for us, it was hugely exciting, the idea that we could have this accreditation within our business. So yeah, and for those that are looking at getting their program accredited as well, it was a fantastic process. The support was brilliant as well, and we took a lot away from it as Whitetree. So I would highly recommend looking at it. You know, and as an individual and an organisation, it really does underpin sort of the excellent standards that you're probably already delivering.
Great. Kelly, thanks very much for now. We're going to hand back over to Josh to give us a little bit more information, and then we'll reconvene for the Q&A in a moment.
Thanks,
Josh.
Matt.
Thanks both. So the main thing I'm going to do now is go through the how, but just before I do that, I'm going to go through the why and summarize some of the points that Kelly just made. So from an individual perspective, there's three main points really. One is just that recognition that you are operating at the highest level of professional practice. Can you bring the slide back up, please? I think we've lost the slide there. Thank you. The second that I hear a lot about from consultants that have gone through this is two things. One is confidence in your competence. So having gone through the whole process, it's a real confidence boost for people who've gone through it. And the second is it's a highly reflective process. So it will give you time to sit back and really assess what have been your major achievements. What are you good at? Where do you want to develop? So that's on an individual perspective. From a firm point of view, I think Kelly touched on the main ones here. One, it gives you a common framework, common language to use with your consultants, and it gives you a talent development tool for certainly grads, early careers focus, giving them a path to how they can develop. And the second is it's a kite mark, if you like, that your company is operating at the highest levels that there are in the industry. And it's interesting, what we're seeing is something Kelly talked about, is companies are really getting on the front foot with this and actively putting information about ChMC in bids. So if you're bidding against Whitetree, you can be safe in the knowledge that they'll be certainly mentioning it. And it means something to clients, certainly in terms of it's an assurance of quality in terms of the people that they will be getting to do the consulting. So those are the main benefits. And then if we move on to the next slide, I'm going to go into the how you go about getting chartered. And as I mentioned earlier, there's two main ways. So if we start at the top, if you're going to go and do a qualification, if we work from left to right, or you're on if you work for Whitetree and have working for an approved program, then you also need experience, 3 or 5 years. You will complete a written submission, which you will then send to us. We'll approve or refer. Once you've got through that, you'll move then to professional discussion, and again, approve, refer, and then you get your award status. If you're going down the experiential route, then you've got a couple of different options. You can, if you've got that 7 years already, then you can do the standard written submission as per anybody else. But there's also an option if you're not a great writer, if you haven't studied for a while and prefer to reflect via talking, you can actually have a reduced written submission. You still need to write something. And then once you've got through that, you do a 2-hour depth interview. So in terms of the total time, on average, based upon the research that we've done, the written submission is around 20 hours worth of effort, and the depth interview is around 9 hours of effort. So there's different options for you there. I think in the Q&A, we invariably get a question about costs, so I'll cover the costs then. But that's essentially the process. The process is straightforward. It's very robust. All our assessors are current or retired consultants themselves. We understand the fact that you might need to redact information, so that's fine. But essentially, you are testing your credentials against that framework. So I can't go on about it enough. The framework is the key. So final slide, really, before we go into the Q&A is, as Kelly mentioned, Whitetree started at the website, so you feel free to start there. Follow us on LinkedIn. We'll send out all the links after the call, and by all means, email me directly and book a session with me to talk about it in more detail. So that's pretty much, well, that's it. That's the slides. So what we're going to do now is move forward to Q&A sessions. We've had some questions submitted in advance. And we're also monitoring the comments as well. So we'll work through those for the next 15 minutes.
Great, thanks, Josh. And yeah, as Josh said, we've had a number of pre-submitted questions. Thank you to those of you that shared those thoughts ahead of the session, and also a number of questions starting to arrive in the live chat. So thank you very much for those. I think we'll start with a couple of the pre-submitted questions. So we had a question from Frank. Who was asking how should he approach applying for chartered management consultant as a sole trader or as an independent consultant? Josh, I wonder if you've got any thoughts on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first place to start is the framework. So I would be looking through the framework to check that you've got the relevant case studies and experience against that. And then, like I say, either fill those gaps or move to the next stage. If we could just bring up there's a slide with costs on it, because essentially then you can manage that process at your own speed and in your own time. So the entire process, if you're a sole trader, is all done online. We'll send you the links to that after. The assessment's all online as well. So I think the point is to work out a time when you know you'll have that either 9 or 20 hours to commit. And then the second point is obviously there's a financial element to this. So for individual accreditation, if you're an experienced professional, as I mentioned earlier, you've got two options. One is the standard written submission, 940. These prices are all UK pounds, obviously, and ex VAT. So you need to factor that in. Depth interview, 1415. And based upon feedback, we've recently launched an instalment plan. So you don't pay for it all in one go. You pay for this over 3 months, which coincides with the amount of time that we give you from when you click the button to say, sign me up. We then give you 3 months. That is extendable, but you would need to apply for an extension if you wanted it. But essentially, as Kelly was saying, there's a lot of information out there, but start with the framework. Make sure you're comfortable with the detail in the framework, and then move forward at the time that you're ready from that point on. That would be my recommendation.
Thanks, Josh. Good stuff. And as Josh said, all of these links will be available to you in a follow-up that we'll send post the webinar today. Great. So a follow-up question, really, I guess, from Shyam. Thank you, Shyam, for your question. So you're keen to understand how many independent consultants or independent contractors have been awarded chartered status. So yeah, we're just over 100 independent consultants have gone through the process thus far. That number's growing now. There's quite a pace starting to emerge with people coming forward and getting involved. As you can tell from that, the majority of people that are coming through the process at this stage are employed by firms such as Whitetree and some of the other brands that Kelly mentioned earlier on. So we've got a real sort of diversity of representation from different types of organisations, different scales of organisations, right across the piece. Alan, many thanks for your question, which relates to the Certified Management Consultant qualification. And Alan was asking why that wasn't taken into account with Chartered Consultant. The good news there, Alan, is that we're working very closely with ICMCI, the international body that owns the Certified Management Consultant qualification standards. So we're working with them at the moment to look at how we can link up those two different awards. So it's a watch this space. I can see that you already hold CMC, and once we've got some news there, we'll be making all CMC holders aware of that news, which I hope will come in the next couple of months. Another great question. Thanks, Christopher Daly, for your question. So Christopher's asking, is there any intention eventually to extend the ChMC to go further in terms of experience? And you're likening that to CMI membership, where we have the fellow category of membership. So in terms of the chartership, Christopher, the chartership sits alongside membership of CMI. And so essentially, we don't have a plan to extend the chartership in that way. But typically when people become chartered consultants, they become members of CMI. And they indeed, as you rightly say, at the point at which they've got 10 years of experience and 3 years of strategic leadership experience, they can upgrade their membership to become a fellow. So they would hold the fellow grade of membership alongside their chartership, if that makes sense. I certainly hope so. But we've probably got time to squeeze one more question in. If anybody has a last minute question to submit, we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, Kelly, I think it's fair to say that the pace at which this is being adopted is really starting to move forward now. And you mentioned that you guys were keen to get involved at a pretty early stage of this, and I guess be part of the scaling up of the chartership. Are there particular advantages that you see from that in being an early adopter?
Yeah, I think for us, we're always looking at how can we stay one step ahead in terms of what we're investing in for our people. We want to be an employer of choice. We want to be a consulting firm of choice as well. So having that investment and moving forward with that now, I think can only be a really good move for us. So yeah, it's been hugely positive so far. There's lots of excitement within the organisation that it's available to people, and it's starting to really gain some traction now. Great,
Kelly, thank you very much. It looks like we've managed to get through all of the questions for today. I do hope that everybody that's watching has thoroughly enjoyed the session. A big thank you to Kelly for joining us. We really do appreciate you sharing your experiences with this, Kelly. I'm sure those watching live or watching later will also echo those sentiments. So thank you, and thank you for your support of the chartership at Whitetree.
Thank you to both of you.
Good stuff. Look, I hope you've enjoyed watching today. We'll be sending follow-ups to those that have registered ahead of the event. Do click on some of the links that we've shared in the chat as well to find out more. And we very much look forward to seeing you become chartered very soon. Thank you.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.